Take a moment to notice how often your hand reaches for your phone without conscious intention, not because there is something urgent or important waiting for you, but because there is a brief moment of silence, a pause that feels uncomfortable. In those small gaps, standing in line, waiting for an elevator, lying in bed before sleep, many of us instinctively reach for digital stimulation. This reflexive behavior is not a personal failure. It is the result of living in an environment designed to constantly pull attention outward. Over time, this habit creates a state of perpetual alertness, where the mind is rarely allowed to rest. Notifications, updates, messages, and endless streams of content quietly train us to expect interruption as the default state of existence. The result is a form of exhaustion that feels difficult to explain. It is not the tiredness that comes from physical labor, but a deeper mental fatigue that accumulates gradually. This is what digital burnout feels like. It is the sense of being mentally crowded, emotionally stretched, and perpetually behind, even when nothing urgent is actually happening. While smartphones and social media are modern inventions, the psychological pattern driving this exhaustion is ancient. Long before screens existed, philosophers observed that much of human suffering comes from misdirected attention and misplaced concern. What feels like a modern crisis is, at its core, a timeless human struggle. The desire to control what cannot be controlled, and the resulting anxiety that follows when that desire is frustrated. Digital burnout is often misunderstood as a problem of overwork or excessive screen time, but this explanation only scratches the surface. The deeper issue is not how much time we spend online, but how emotionally invested we become in what we encounter there. Every notification carries an implicit question. Does this matter? And does it matter to me? Every post, comment, or message invites interpretation, comparison, or judgment. Over time, the mind becomes conditioned to treat these small signals as meaningful, even when they are trivial. This constant emotional engagement drains mental energy in subtle ways. You may not feel stressed in the traditional sense, yet you feel restless, distracted, and unable to focus deeply on anything for long. This is because your nervous system is being asked to respond repeatedly to information it was never meant to process at such volume or speed. Social media compresses the experiences, opinions, and reactions of millions of people into a single stream, delivered directly into your awareness. The human mind evolved to handle a limited social environment, not a global audience. As a result, the emotional weight of digital interaction accumulates quietly. You may feel pressure to stay informed, to stay relevant, or to stay responsive, even when doing so adds little value to your life. Burnout emerges when the mind becomes trapped in a cycle of constant evaluation, where attention is repeatedly pulled toward outcomes you cannot influence, yet feel compelled to monitor. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a powerful lens for understanding digital burnout. Central to Stoicism is the concept known as the dichotomy of control, which divides all aspects of life into two categories: things that are within your control and things that are not. According to the Stoics, peace of mind depends almost entirely on your ability to recognize this distinction and live accordingly. When you focus your energy on what is within your control, you act effectively and without unnecessary distress. When you attach your emotional well-being to what lies outside your control, you invite frustration and anxiety. The Stoics argued that most human suffering arises not from external events themselves, but from our judgments about them. In the digital age, this insight becomes especially relevant. Online platforms constantly expose us to outcomes we cannot govern: approval, disagreement, visibility, and attention, while subtly encouraging us to care deeply about them. The result is a reversal of the Stoic ideal. Instead of grounding ourselves in what we can influence, we become preoccupied with external responses that remain uncertain and unpredictable. This imbalance is not accidental. It is reinforced by systems designed to maximize engagement rather than well-being. Stoicism does not suggest withdrawing from society or rejecting technology altogether, but it does demand a disciplined relationship with external stimuli. It asks us to reclaim responsibility for our inner state, regardless of the noise around us. When applied to social media, the dichotomy of control reveals how much emotional energy is routinely wasted. Consider the elements of online life that lie completely beyond your influence. You cannot control how algorithms prioritize content, how many people see your posts, or how others interpret your words. You cannot control whether a message is ignored, misunderstood, or criticized. Even when you act thoughtfully and authentically, outcomes remain uncertain. Yet many people find themselves checking metrics, rereading comments, or anticipating reactions, as if these factors were personal responsibilities. This creates a subtle form of dependence, where emotional stability becomes tied to feedback loops that operate independently of intention or effort. From a Stoic perspective, this is a fundamental mistake. Caring deeply about outcomes you cannot govern is a reliable way to undermine your own peace. It does not make you more effective or more connected. It simply makes you more vulnerable to fluctuation. When your mood rises and falls based on external validation, you surrender control over your inner life. The Stoics warned against this pattern long before digital platforms existed, recognizing that true freedom lies emotional independence from forces beyond one's command. In the online world, this lesson is not merely philosophical, it is practical and necessary for mental health. On the other side of the dichotomy of control lies a smaller, but far more meaningful set of factors. Those that truly belong to you. You have control over when you open an app, how long you remain there, and what you choose to consume. You decide which voices you allow into your attention, and which ones you quietly remove. You control whether notifications interrupt your thoughts or remain silent until you are ready to engage. You also control how you interpret what you see, and how much significance you assign to it. These choices may seem small, but they compound over time. The Stoics believed that freedom is built through daily decisions, rather than dramatic gestures. Digital well-being follows the same principle. You do not need to eliminate social media to regain control. You need to redefine its role in your life. When you consciously choose how and when to engage, technology becomes a tool rather than a master. This shift requires awareness and discipline, but it restores a sense of agency that burnout erodes. By redirecting attention toward what you can influence, you gradually reduce the mental friction caused by constant exposure to uncertainty. Attention, according to Stoic thought, is one of the most valuable resources a person possesses. What you attend to repeatedly shapes your perceptions, emotions, and character. In the modern digital environment, attention has become a commodity aggressively competed for by countless platforms and creators. This competition incentivizes content that provokes strong reactions, outrage, envy, fear, or excitement because such emotions keep people engaged. Over time, repeated exposure to emotionally charged material conditions the mind to remain in a heightened state. From a Stoic perspective, this is dangerous not because emotions are inherently bad, but because unexamined emotional reactions reduce autonomy. If your attention is constantly pulled toward what others want you to notice, your inner life becomes reactive rather than intentional. The Stoics emphasize the importance of choosing one's focus carefully, recognizing that character is shaped by habitual thought. In this sense, Digital burnout is not merely a result of overstimulation, but of misaligned attention. When attention is scattered across countless trivial concerns, depth and clarity are lost. Regaining control over attention is therefore not an act of withdrawal, but an act of self-respect. Practical Stoic discipline in the digital age begins with reducing unnecessary noise. Many notifications do not provide essential information. They merely announce that something has happened. By disabling non-essential alerts, you reclaim control over when external information enters your awareness. This single change can significantly reduce background stress. Another practice involves setting intentional periods for digital engagement, rather than responding impulsively throughout the day. When you decide in advance when to check messages or social platforms, you shift from reaction to choice. The Stoics valued preparation and foresight, believing that intentional structure supports inner calm. Similarly, curating your digital environment is not an act of avoidance, but one of discernment. Removing sources of constant comparison or agitation protects mental clarity. The goal is not to remain uninformed, but to remain unburdened by information that adds little value. Each of these practices reinforces the same principle. Your attention is yours to allocate, not something to be claimed by default. Another Stoic practice relevant to digital burnout is examining impressions before accepting them. The Stoics taught that events themselves do not disturb us. Our judgments about them do. When scrolling through social media, it is easy to accept impressions automatically. A post may trigger envy, irritation, or self-doubt before you even realize it. Stoicism encourages a pause between stimulus and response. In that pause, you can ask whether the impression deserves your emotional investment. Is this information useful? Is this comparison fair? Is this reaction helping or harming your peace? Over time, cultivating this pause strengthens emotional resilience. Instead of being carried along by the emotional current of online spaces, you learn to observe without immediate attachment. This does not make you indifferent or disconnected. It makes you selective. Selectivity is not apathy, but wisdom in action. By questioning impressions, you prevent external events from dictating your internal state. The ultimate aim of Stoic practice is not control over the external world, but mastery of one's inner life. In the context of digital burnout, this means developing a relationship with technology that serves your values rather than undermines them. Social media can inform, entertain, and connect, but only when used deliberately. Without discipline, it becomes a source of constant agitation. Stoicism offers a framework for navigating this environment without resentment or dependency. It teaches that peace is not achieved by eliminating challenges, but by responding to them wisely. When you align your digital habits with the dichotomy of control, you reduce unnecessary suffering. You stop expecting platforms to provide validation or fulfillment they were never designed to offer. Instead, you ground your sense of worth in what you can influence, your actions, your judgments, and your character. Digital burnout is not a sign that technology is inherently harmful, nor is it a personal failure to adapt. It is a signal that attention has drifted away from what truly belongs to you. The Stoic solution is not dramatic renunciation, but quiet recalibration. By distinguishing between what you control and what you do not, you reclaim ownership of your mental space. Notifications lose their urgency, metrics lose their power, and external noise fades into the background. What remains is a steadier mind, capable of engagement without exhaustion. Stoicism reminds us that freedom is internal, and peace is practiced rather than discovered. In a world that constantly demands attention, choosing where to place it becomes an act of resistance and wisdom. Control what is yours, release what is not, In doing so, you create space for clarity, resilience, and a more deliberate way of living even in the digital age. Asterisk.